Yeah, I wanted to get
Okay. Let me get this. Yeah, let me get this started. Everyone want to get started? Okay.
Yes, that would all be.
Okay, everybody, let's get started.
Separate discussion.
Nantucket Conservation Commission meeting for ready? Okay. For January 23rd. We are recording, so if you're recording, please let us know. And if you could silence your cell phones, that'd be appreciated. Start with the public meeting, public comment for items not being heard tonight. Seeing not, we're going to public hearing. We have a bunch of continuances here. Mary D. Starr, 19 East Creek Road, continued to February 20th. Gregory Race, 19 East Creek Road, continued to February 20th. Laz family, and then NT, 20 Wacoit Road, continued to February 20th. BSS Hummock Pond LLC, 289 Hummock Pond Road, continued to February 20th. Town of Nantucket F Street is continued till February 6th. And SP Norwell LLC, 104 and 111 Washington is continued till February 6th. So we are going to start with Hagenbart, 6 Wall Street.
Actually, if we could.
No, maybe not.
Representative for that isn't here yet.
Okay.
So I would say maybe. If
Next
you,
one?
If you put that one to the end.
Sure. We can do that.
You can start with number 7.
Okay, we'll start with number 7, Eel Point Nominee Trust, 189 Eel Point Road.
I've got the plan, so if you want to use these ones, go ahead. Buffer zone on there.
So those look at this kind of what be in your packet. Has some revisions to it, so you may want to use them.
Thank you. For the applicant, Eel Point Road Nominee Trust, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors. Just to get you orientated, the photo that I gave you, if you kind of use the house and the bocce court kind of as your guideline there, and the plan is positioned so the house is in front, the bocce court is in the back, house in front, bocce court in back, house in front, then the bocce court in back. Gives you a sense of that photo. And that photo that you have is the actual site overview photo, which is a blow up of the one that's on the plan itself. So this is a existing piece of residentially developed property that was permitted in the mid-90s, actually in 1987. So this was a vacant parcel of land that in 1987, a superseding order of conditions was issued by the state, and a order of conditions was issued by the Nantucket Conservation Commission for the development and construction of a single-family home on the site with an on-site well and an on-site septic system. The property was developed. The building department issued a certificate of occupancy in 1990. And subsequently, the property went into foreclosure. So in 1991, April of 1991, the current owner, Eel Point Road Nominee Trust, two principals that own that property, have owned the property since they purchased it at foreclosure. They've occupied the property, made improvements to the property, have never come back to the commission, were unaware of the fact that there were 2 outstanding orders on the property as they purchased it as a foreclosure, and were not aware until I was got involved in the property and was able to determine that there were 2 recorded outstanding order of conditions on the property. So we have 2 orders, the superseding order and the order under the local, that are not closed out. So we're looking to close out those 2 permits. Unfortunately, the site as it exists today does not look like it did when they purchased it, when they got it at the foreclosure. And improvements have been made to the property without the benefit of the permits. And I cannot go and close these permits out now because the site isn't in compliance with the original orders. So what we're doing is filing a notice of intent to do some mitigation work on the property with the hope that then we'll be able to bring the property through the new notice of intent, either more into compliance and then validate some of the work that's currently been done, on the site, and then hopefully we can close out these two superseding order of conditions. It appears to me that based on, if you go back and look at the historical photos of the site, that it was purchased in '91 at the foreclosure, and it looks like between the work that has been done on the site was done sometime between 2003 and 2007. If you go back and look at the photos of the site, it appears that the site as you see it today, the work that was done sometime between 2003 and 2007. No work has been done on the site since the 2007. At least it appears that way through an examination of historic photos. So the original permit, as I said, from both the superseding order and the local order, permitted the construction of the dwelling, septic system, and essentially that was really it at the time. There was at the time an existing traveled way that went from Eastdale Point through the property, over the private property, out to the harbor, which I believe people used to use to fish at one point. That road has long since been abandoned. That road no longer, that access road does not exist. It now partially exists as a footpath. But item one, the bocce court was built within the confines of that abandoned right-of-way, or that roadway that was there. So the bocce court was constructed within what was the old way that people used to drive from Eastdale Point down to the harbor. The current notice of intent sets forth the intent to remove the bocce court. The bocce court would be removed. We will provide, I'm going to ask for a continuance tonight. We do have our DEP file number, but I did want to come before the commission first to get a sense of the project itself, explain it to you, and then we'll come back at a later meeting, or hopefully by next meeting, with a more detailed plan with regard to remediation work. So the initial plan under the current notice of intent is to have the bocce court removed and provide replication or revegetation within that area of the site. The resource areas on the site are essentially to the northerly part of the site. It's a salt marsh bordered by a vegetated wetland. That's the line of flagging that you see along the southerly portion of the property. There is also some dune area, coastal dune, in this particular portion of the site over here. So we have coastal dune, vegetated wetland. That vegetated wetland borders on a salt marsh. The entire developed portion of the site, for all practical purposes, is within land subject to coastal storm flowage under the 2014 mapping. That line is shown here as a flood zone, AE elevation 8, which is this heavy dark line, elevation 9. Elevation 9 in this area. In this area here, flood zone elevation 9. And that is also, based on the grading in that area, considered, a portion of that is also coastal bank. When the project was permitted in '87, the resource areas that were marked were the vegetated wetland. It was in land subject to coastal storm flowage at that time also, and there was then a 100-foot setback from the vegetated wetland. And the vegetated wetland actually pretty much is pretty close to what we have delineated today. In this case here, where the way's been abandoned, it's crept up in this particular area. But for the most part, the resource areas under that 1987 application were salt marsh, vegetated wetland, and the flood zone. In addition to the bocce court, you can obviously see that the site itself, with regard to the hardscape and some of the lawn areas, have crept around that side of the building. And then the deck itself, the deck that you see it as you see it today, is a further projection than what was on that original that original building when it was purchased at the foreclosure. The deck line, if you will, was a straight line across the backside of the dwelling, right up in this area here, right up in that area right there, and then right in this area here. That's where the deck line was.
So was it
When the
following,
property was purchased.
was it following this, did it follow the 50?
Well, no, that line, the 50-foot no-build was in a different location at the
Okay,
time,
gotcha.
originally. I mean, that's, what you see there, the red line you see now is based on current
Yeah, okay.
resource areas. But the deck itself was limited to the back line of that bump out of the house.
Gotcha.
And it's been projected in that span of 2003 to 2007, that's when that deck was bumped further out. So that's what we have. You know, we have a site that we have 2 orders of conditions that a certificate of compliance cannot be issued for. We filed a new notice of intent. The intent would be the removal and revegetation of the bocce court area. And I guess now we're left to discuss whether or not we feel there's any other remediation area that we feel is necessary, or we proceed forward with mainly the vegetation area for the bocce court and maybe that 25-foot buffer zone area, and we look at that with regard to remediating that particular area. As I said, you know, I have to come back for an actual more detailed plan for the bocce court, but I did want to get the plan in front of you, kind of lay out where we're at and what we're trying to do here, and then see if we can get some input from the commission. You may want to do a site visit. I know Jeff has been to the site previously, but the commission may want to also maybe do a site visit, or if you think you have enough information from the photo to kind of get an accurate picture. I think the photos give you a pretty accurate picture of what's going on out there. So the area itself, the area to the south, this property was recently before you. This has been completely redeveloped. This particular property here, and then the property to the east of East Seal Point Road those are 2 newer applications that came before you, and those were tear downs, rebuild. So there's new construction around abutting the property that have been applications that were before you recently, but those were completely different applications. The building itself is it's due to the flood zone. It's not a foundation. It's a building on piles. It's a pile foundation, elevated. At the time, it was elevated in accordance with the flood zone regulations, pre-2014, obviously. And the building itself was set. The first floor is above the flood zone, as it was when it was constructed. It's a pile foundation, and with just a lattice skirt around it.
So, Paul, I remember when it was a single story back in the 80s. At least I think I do. When was it actually put on piles?
It was constructed. It was constructed new in 87. I think the permits were pulled in 87, 88. The building department CO was issued in 1990.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't think it ever. But the plans are always, I think, a story and a half. I don't think the second story was ever added. So. Anyway, but that's based at least on what I've been able to tell from the building department. And as I said, so the sequence was 87 permitting, foreclosure, building department CO issued in 1990, foreclosure 91, and then current owner picked it up at the foreclosure. So Gary Wynn was the original, I think it was the original property it was Gary is the one who I think built and developed the property.
I have to say, I'd like to see the deck. At least out of the 25. I mean, that's not good.
Yeah, the bocce court seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah, the bocce court I think is
But
is
the
a
deck
given,
for sure.
You know,
So do we know when the deck was extended, or?
in that between 2003 to 2007,
Yeah.
everything was done.
Yeah.
Because I can go to the historic photos,
Yeah.
and up to 2003, it's pretty much looks to me like it would have when it was foreclosed on. So in this time frame is when everything I think was basically done.
You see the wood.
Jeff, can you pull the original order of conditions
so
up?
then-
Either send it around or have it ready for our next site
This
meeting,
was
so
the-
we can look at that one before we
And
go and look.
then this was
It
added.
might take
Yeah.
some to do with just find the superseding ones.
I have them both.
Check that.
I
Okay.
yeah, I
Faint
have,
line with the seam.
I have them both, because the original, the superseding one wasn't,
good.
there wasn't anything too particular in that, but the local one obviously did speak to, you know, lawn areas and, you know,
Right.
stuff. It was an old basic, it was basic, but I mean, the site itself, I think when it was originally built, was a challenging site when they first even built it. I think that's probably why the superseding order was there for a reason.
Yep.
And I'm assuming there was something that happened here locally maybe, and they went to the state to actually get the permit.
Got it, got
So I
it.
think the superseding order was issued first, and then the local was, I think, followed,
Okay.
you know, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can submit both of those.
Yeah, that'd be great. See.
And then we'll go from there. You know. And I'm assuming the reason it wasn't, if it was a foreclosure, they didn't have the benefit of having an attorney review the title of the property, and,
Right.
you know, they were unaware that there were two outstanding orders, and, I'm assuming that's what, you know, anybody today wouldn't be buying the property without doing due diligence,
Sure,
finding
sure.
out that they have them, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've got-
But to be honest with you, at the time of the foreclosure, the property was pretty close, I think, to being probably well.
In compliance, yeah.
In
Yeah, right.
in compliance,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
We've gotta get landscapers on this island on board with following the rules.
So,
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
A wild bunch, huh?
It's a wild bunch.
I think where it was something.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's homeowner driven. I think it's lack of knowledge, or sometimes lack of even really caring, but probably any number of things, but for sure.
Well, I think that in this case, I mean, more than likely, the person who's probably in this doesn't understand land subject to coastal soil and flow. Number one.
Right.
So number one, they
Yeah.
don't even know that they're in.
Yeah.
They think, all right, the salt marsh is back there, and
Yeah.
you know, I put the bocce court, it was a road, now it's a bocce court, what's the
Right,
difference? I
right.
stopped cars from driving down there, now it's, you know, so, I mean, I think that's probably, you know, part of it, but as you say, it's always been in the flood zone. It was in the flood zone in 1987,
Yeah.
so.
Oh, Pat's still there.
So.
Pat's still there.
And then just as a kind of, you'll see some of the fact where the way is here, this was part of the yard sale program, so there was a part of the town actually took this section of roadway here with the intent of abandoning, taking that property and then selling it back to the homeowners.
Abutters, yeah.
Abutting that particular property. I think the land bank at the time expressed some concern with that because they saw that, although there is no access to the harbor from this particular area, I mean, the land bank was concerned, and we left an easement for that fact in case there was ever access to get from here out to the harbor. But for years, and because I remember this coming up at town meeting, you know, people used to, before there was a gate here, they used to drive, that's where they used to fish at the harbor. They used to come right down East Hill Point, drive through here,
Yep.
and then fish, you know, although this is just a path that kind of went through the property.
So
The owner also owns, this property is, 189 Hill Point is here, but they also own this piece here. That's a separate parcel, that they do control that. That was picked up at the foreclosure also, this piece down here. And that's bounded by Land Bank and Nantucket Conservation Foundation land. This chunk, this piece of land down here. This over here.
right, does it still exist as a
Boggy.
like a paper road or a road?
Oh, it's still, yes, as of right now, what,
But it didn't go to what do you call
Yard
it?
sale.
A yard sale.
no, the town has taken, so the plan was done, the town took it, but they have not disposed of it.
Gotcha.
So as of right now, that way is owned by the town of Nantucket,
Okay.
free and clear of any rights of anybody else. 'Cause that's the purpose of the taking, is to clear up, basically, essentially, clear the title, if you will, wipe out any rights before they then put it into the yard sale program.
Jeff, does the fact that it is a paper road speak to any wetland setback waiver kind of considerations? In other words, this road goes right through 25, if not even further, right?
Oh, but that would never be, that road would never be developed.
Okay, so
At the most, what would happen is there's potentially you could, you know, they would have to if they could potentially permit a footpath. If somebody but then they'd
Anywhere
have to
within
come
the
here and do
area.
it.
Yeah,
require a
technically.
It would still be subject to
You're
the-
not allowed
to
to
the-
build or do anything in
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
paper roads, cause it blocks access.
Right.
But that's
Yeah.
not on our end,
Yeah.
that's on
Yeah.
other.
And any work in there would
permitting
require
boards.
a permit if it's within jurisdictional areas.
Yeah.
So if the town wanted to put a road in there, they'd have to come
Yeah,
apply
okay,
to put a road.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just,
And I think
just
the
looking
most-
at the angles in
Yeah,
case.
the most,
there's
if anything, would
contingencies.
be, you know, potentially, if the land bank wanted to potentially create a footpath, because it's the land bank is here, it's their property by eliminating that way, it would have been their property that would have been affected.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, the Crowder property still has access off East Hill Point, this property has access off East Hill Point, this is connected to that, and also, the NCF property would benefit from it too, but. And I don't know the history of why I'm assuming this was probably blocked off because it was basically it's not a deeded way, it's not an easement, people were just driving over this property to get to the harbor. So,
But to clarify, Paul, so the bocce court and the deck are both added by the current owner.
correct, yes, yeah. Yeah, current owner's been there since '91, and based on at least the aerial photos that I've looked at, those were definitely put in. Yeah, this was, yeah. As I said, the majority of what you see on these photos was done by the current owner.
No planning ahead.
Yeah.
Ugly.
Well, any thoughts, questions?
Yeah, I'd like to see the original order, and I think we should see this maybe
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
next,
Yeah.
or the couple of Mondays from now. And then by then you're gonna have something submitted, Paul, as far as.
Yeah, as far as, I think my
Remediation.
first indicate, what I'll probably do is I'll look at the 25 up to the bocce court, and then come up with, that's what I'll probably come in with next.
Yeah.
And then we can, you know, see how you feel from there. I mean, Ashley's made a mention of the deck, and we'll kind of address that.
Yeah, I
issue.
tend to agree with her on that one.
You can see where the
If you
deck
could put a
goes
few
at.
flags on the 25 would be great, so
Yeah.
we can, I mean, out in the field.
Yeah.
So we
Oh,
could-
okay, yeah,
So we can have
for
a
the site
sense.
visit,
Yeah.
okay, no problem.
Okay.
All right, so I'd ask for a
Let me
continuance.
see if any questions from the public on this one? Yeah, so we'll continue, yeah, 2 weeks?
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Continue for 2 weeks. Okay. Interesting. Let's just see, SB Norwell LLC,
Is that
104, 111,
That one's because you're at the one for
oh, I'm gonna pull it. Oh, wait,
Well, I
I'm
think I
sorry.
sent you my,
I made my little
agenda
markings
there.
here. Sorry about that. Dwortsky, Baines Family Trust, 8 Giacomo Road. Arrows and circles.
So there's a lot going on.
Doesn't make a lot of sense, I tell you. Until you realize what you're using it for.
We're on 6 Wall Street. Hagenbart.
No,
Hagenbart?
we're on A, Shakimo.
No, we're on
Hagenbart's gonna be the
Hagenbart.
last.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
A, Shakimo.
Where are we?
Number 1 is advance.
I'm sorry, I screwed you up. 8.
Number 8.
Number 8, sorry about that, Annie. All right, here we go.
Page 54.
Jeff Blackwell for the applicant. David Haynes attended the first public hearing and wasn't able to come tonight. I think the only thing we're waiting for to close was response from Natural Heritage, which has now come in. Did you see that? It was later in the day that David forwarded that
Yes,
response.
yes, mirror also.
Yeah. We added the sweet pepper bush to the plant list on the plans, so the plans that I'm holding only differ from the previous by the addition of the sweet pepper bush. Sure. And I don't know that there are any other unresolved questions or
That was it?
No,
That was it.
that was it.
Are we gonna stick with the fence, just moving a fence forward?
We haven't been able to get an answer from the owners. If the commission is neutral on the point, I suppose I would ask that we reserve the right to put in a split rail fence at the edge of the new undisturbed buffer.
Yeah, well, I think we were
We've been
talking about
trying to get an answer.
properly denoting it so that it wouldn't be mowed in the future. I think there was a general feeling that split rail was the best
We preferred that.
preferred, and best and preferred, so,
Yeah.
yeah. I seem to like split rail too, so.
I guess the only other less visible way of demarcating that boundary would be, you know, like 4x4 posts that are painted white and are 18 inches high every 10 feet. I mean, I really don't know.
Yeah, I
if the client
understand.
cares one way or
Well, we
another,
can
so if you feel
condition
strongly.
it.
I would say if you can certainly
Condition it?
put the condition in for the split rail fence, if they would like to change it, they can come back for a minor modification or amendment if it's a drastic change.
I agree.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
that's good.
Any other concerns or questions?
So I'll give you these,
No.
the two next week.
Any questions from the public?
I'll keep those two.
Okay. Jeff, we have everything we need?
Yes, we do.
Someone to make a motion?
Motion to close?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Starbuck Realty LLC, 44, excuse me, Warren's Landing Road.
Yep, one marked up in the middle. Brian Madden from LEC representing the applicant Starbuck Realty LLC. Proposed project before you involves construction of a single-family home and some additional activities. Resource areas on the subject parcel are bordering vegetated wetlands, highlighted in green, located in the northwestern portion of the site. There's also BVW south of Blue Heron Way, within the south of the property. And the surveyors during the survey work had noted some blue flagging on an abutting property that could be a potential isolated wetland. We weren't quite sure, so we just show it there graphically for reference purposes. So the proposed, under existing conditions, there's single-family dwelling that's going to be become a guest house. There's no actual work activity being proposed on that structure itself. A new single-family dwelling is being proposed, primary dwelling, within the northern portion of the site. That area is outside of the 100-foot buffer zone to the BVW. There's also a proposed pool, a detached garage, and a pervious driveway parking area associated with that structure, and the septic system. The septic system is going to be outside the 100-foot buffer zone, and only a small portion of the pool and garage occur within the 100-foot. The pool fence is located essentially upgrading of the 50-foot buffer zone and kind of along the floodplain boundary on the parcel. In the pool, bottom of the pool is going to be elevation 5, and based on the recent soil testing, estimated high groundwater is at 2.7, so we will maintain that 2-foot separation to high groundwater. Coming off of Blue Heron Way, there is a new proposed gravel or pervious driveway to reach up to the guest house. All that activity is outside the 25-foot buffer zone, is partially within the flood zone, but it's not going to impair the land's ability to absorb any floodwaters. And there's a small shed at the terminus of that new gravel driveway entrance. It's straddles the 100-foot buffer zone. Erosion control barriers are shown on the plan upgrade of the resource areas, and no waivers are required for the project. Turn over to questions.
What line is this? Is this just one that should have been discontinued?
I think it has something to do with the well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's part of the well recharge protection area?
Yeah. Come up.
So, does the, the long arm of the legal profession. So, does it looks as though it's sloping down from the house down to the wetland, so that, I'm just thinking about pool discharge. Where would it be discharged, or would it have to be pumped off the property so that you didn't go to the wetland?
Yeah, the topography there is actually relatively minimal.
flat.
It's less than 10 to 1, hence there's no coastal bank out there.
Gotcha.
And you know, with that pool just being minimally hitting the 100-foot, you know, we're not, you know, anticipating, you know, some sort of runoff. Everything's going to be flat at the obviously the patio itself.
Pretty straightforward. Other questions?
None here.
Okay. Questions from the public? Sure, please come up. Could you come up to the microphone? Give your name, please.
I'm Judith Drake.
Oh, at the mic. No. I'm sorry. At the microphone right here. But my apologies.
That's all right. I'm Judith Drake. I'm at 32 Warren's Landing Road, and 34. It was a family property that's now in 4 pieces. So 34 is my nephew, my niece, and her husband own it, which is borders on 44. So it's an old, quiet piece of property, and like everything else on Mill Point Road, it's growing up around us, and we can't do a lot about that. But we are concerned about the conservation. Just concern. Want to express concern. But our biggest concern, which may not have anything to do with you, is the driveway off Blue Heron Way. I don't know if anyone's ever gone down Blue Heron Way, but it's dirt, and it is a one-way road, and to have cars, I don't know how cars are going to come and go off that without making a big driveway. So that may not be your purview here, but along with everything else, I mean, it does. I walk through every day.
Yeah.
Does that?
No, I mean, it goes through the wetland, so.
Yeah, and it's there, and apparently, according to the Hoffenreffers, who border it on the other side, it used to be it's very swampy down there, and the road was moved up a little bit because it's wetter, more wet on on the other side of Blue Heron Way, down
right,
to the swamp.
Right at the bend.
Yeah, so that road has already been, if you go there, it's almost like the Eel Point Road on the other side, not quite. All right, so that was just my concern. I don't know whether this is the place or it's when it comes to the HDC.
I mean, certainly,
A little bit.
I did look at this a little bit. They shouldn't need a lot of construction access for this driveway, right? That should be almost nothing.
Yeah, it's just going
there's
to
no
be
way
for
you
the
can-
driveway itself.
Yeah,
Everything's
so
coming off.
there's that positive side. You shouldn't
Yeah,
have like
yeah.
this
No, I mean, you
construction.
couldn't do it. You couldn't get a truck in there.
Yeah, I mean, you can
So
see
that's-
the entrance coming off, that low area. Actually, a portion of the property is within the traveled way. That's where it kind of dips down right in that corner.
That
where it gets
goes right
rutted
into
and
that,
gets
yeah.
ponded a little bit. But right now there's no proposed improvements to the roadway itself.
Well, all I'm saying is you might have to make and that is a right-of-way to the Hoffenreffers' house. I mean, I don't know.
So if work was gonna be proposed on the way, would require a separate application to here to
Okay.
do? Would have to have property owner consent and all those fun
public
pieces that go
road.
with it, so.
No, it's a right-of-way. No, it's not a public road.
But certainly, if you ever saw vehicles or something happening that you thought was damaging to this wetland, that's something you could take pictures of and report, so that that could be dealt
Oh,
with
I see.
even
That could be
at
something
that
too, that
time.
if you guys wish, you could certainly condition that construction vehicle access be off the more landing side with the, even if it is driveway construction.
It makes total sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
Yep.
that,
What's the width of the road to the
Pretty narrow.
Yeah.
To the guest house?
One car.
and you get
yeah
pinstripes if you go down.
yeah? We'll see. Then they won't go down it.
No, well, the guest house is the only access.
Well, and
Yeah.
I mean, the Hoffenreffers theoretically could stop it. You know, they could barrier it so you can't go through, and it's mostly obviously Nantucketers that go through, because summer people see the no trespassing sign and they mostly turn around because they don't know what's there. But, so it's used by fishermen. I mean, it's fine. They're very patient, but they could block that off
Mm-hmm.
at some point.
Right.
Anyway,
Okay.
is that good? So,
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Good
no,
information.
you don't want that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions from the public? Cormac.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Cormac Collier from Nantucket Land Council. Just to put it in context, if you zoom out, this is really at the apex of the two inland salt marshes that go into Nantucket Harbor. And just through you, Mr. Chairman, to Jeff, what would you consider Nantucket Harbor to be? Would it actually be the estuaries coming out, or would it be the harbor itself? And I think Jeff knows where I'm going with this, because it's a jurisdiction
In which regard?
for the Board of Health.
Oh, you're talking flow?
No, I'm talking about,
I would think that.
there's a Board of Health regulation that within 300 feet of Nantucket Harbor, they have to do, meet certain criteria for their septic and sewage. So, I know it's not necessarily in your jurisdiction,
Yeah,
but
sounds
you're
like-
doing your best to try and protect the harbor as well, so how that really comes into effect. Just make that statement. And then secondly, again, with these lots that are really right abutting some of these sensitive resource areas, I think we can go above and beyond in terms of landscaping and not just following the BMPs, but submitting the records to the Concom for the life of the permit, the landscaping records. And also not in your jurisdiction, but this is where the burial ground, this is where one of the Native American burial grounds was found right out here on the Hoffenreffers property, and I'm good friends with Gene, so I've walked it. There's artifacts all over the place. I imagine there's stuff here too. I don't know where the convergence between Mass Historic and any local permitting body actually happens. So, I don't know. If Jeff can look into that and let Mass Historic know that this is happening. It's easy with Heritage, but it's not with Mass Historic.
Usually Mass Historic gets triggered through the building department process.
Building department? Okay, thanks, Jeff.
So,
So that's about it.
Okay.
before you walk off.
Thank you.
Excuse me?
Uh.
So who does have jurisdiction over that 300-foot
Separation.
separation to the harbor?
Board of Health.
Board of Health.
Board
Yeah.
of Health, but it would affect how you guys are permitting their septic system. And this isn't an IA system, which I got fairly confused by.
Right.
It's a shame, because now it's an eight-bedroom conventional. That's a pretty big load going into that area.
Back up to the Board of Health, huh?
Well, isn't
I'm
much.
not sure if it's.
Oh, maybe not yet then.
But that's something I can certainly follow up with.
Okay.
The health director about.
Yeah, for sure. So, it's just a regular absorption. That's a little surprising. Okay. Other questions? No? Okay, Jeff, do you have,
Let's see that image.
Well, you don't want to.
Oh, we're gonna continue for the,
Yeah.
for the questions, yeah. So you want to continue for questions concerning,
Well, I think a lot of the questions that were raised kind of fall into different arenas, so I don't see anything that necessarily needs to be answered for you guys. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, I'm not too concerned about the road. I mean, I don't know if the health department,
Well, the
I mean,
health
that's-
department is gonna have to apply the criteria that they have.
right, I don't see how we can dictate the septic system.
No, I mean, if it meets the performance standards, it meets the
Right.
performance standards. I tend to agree that it's a good area for IA systems.
Yeah,
I think ultimately it's gonna have to go through the process, and if that 300-foot setback is determined to apply by how they determine the jurisdictional boundary of that,
mm-hmm,
then it's gonna have to apply. I mean, that's why you have to go through all of the permitting processes
right,
to do that.
exactly.
We can certainly encourage the Board of Health to look into an IA and request that, but that's ultimately their decision to make.
Right.
Well, so to, as far as conditions, Cormac's point of trying to beef up the, landscaping, restrictions on this property, I think that's a good one. Also, to put the condition of no construction access off Blue Heron Way, that's something we can do. I'm not sure we can do anything about the septic, like you say. I don't think we know what we can do or consider vis-a-vis the 300-foot potential setback to the harbor. Where would that fall, Cormac? About where would that fall?
Mr. Chairman, is that okay?
Yeah, please.
Where I was going was more what Jeff had alluded to in terms of encouraging and working with the health department, because it's not necessarily jurisdictional. This is a boarding vegetating wetland to a salt marsh, to a open water system that then goes into the harbor. And it's just a question of does it.
Where do you define the
where do you
300?
define it?
Oh,
So it's more about the encouragement. That's why I brought it up.
Okay. So under our purview,
Yeah.
yeah,
there's only so far we can go, but I agree that we should make this pretty restrictive if we can.
right, I mean, it looks like they're keeping, although is this I mean, are they planning to clear right down to the sill fence? I mean, where are they, what's their landscaping plan here? It's hard to tell from
Yeah, it
all
would
the
be
pre-existing. It'll all be lawn.
And I think whatever appropriate conditions, would be
Mm-hmm.
suitable in this location.
So up to the 50.
Yeah, well, you got the sill fence,
Almost.
well,
Almost.
beyond the 50. That's good. Okay, well, we can deal with these conditions when we do orders, so. There's no other questions and no other questions in the public. Jeff, we have everything we need?
You do.
Okay.
All this back up to me.
Would you like to close?
Please.
Do I get a motion?
Yeah, move to close.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that closes. Thank you.
Just for kind of a point of information, everybody, I've been trying to sit down and have a weekly check-in with the public health director.
Mm-hmm.
So we usually try to do it on Fridays, Thursdays or Fridays, so I actually will we have our regular schedule on Friday, so I can definitely bring it up today.
That'd be cool.
We try to touch base more regularly than what we had previously. What's that?
They were already permitted.
They have not.
Okay. So this is NAC Conservation Incorporated, 204 Cliff Road. Great name.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Kevin Gale. I represent NAC Conservation, Inc. And with me is Brian Madden from LAC Environmental Consultants, who will present the application. Starting off, this is an application, a notice of intent for a residential project for property at 204 Cliff Road. It's about 13.8 acres and abuts Knox's Pond. Just by way of background, NAC Conservation, Inc. is a 501(c)(3) public charity that's dedicated to conservation purposes. And one of the predicaments, and it's an adjunct of the Nantucket Anglers Club. NAC, I think, is an acronym for Nantucket Anglers Club. As many of you might know, the Anglers Club right now is renting space down next to Commercial Wharf from NIR. the rent's prohibitive, and the future is risky at best, and the club would really like to get a new clubhouse on a new parcel of land. So part of the intention here is for NAC to establish the fair market value of this parcel by making it or deeming it a buildable lot, because NAC has a fiduciary duty as a public charity to establish fair market value for its assets if it's either going to sell them or swap them. And what it wants to do is NAC wants to hold on to the sale proceeds if it sells this lot, buy another parcel, build a clubhouse for the Anglers Club, and lease it to the Anglers Club. So there's no intention here for NAC to divest itself of the value of this asset. And frankly, NAC would very much encourage neighbors and other interested parties, if they wanted to acquire this land from them. But at this point, we're here tonight to ask you to consider this notice of intent for a residential project and to assess the project like you would assess any other residential project. So I'm going to turn it over to Brian, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
All right, thanks. So the property occurs along the eastern and southern shoreline of Maxon's Pond. There's inland bank, bordering vegetated wetland associated with the pond. What is flagged and shown on the plans is the BVW, which varies in some respects across upgrading of the pond shoreline. But in some locations, it's relatively steep break in topography embankment that defines the BVW. And if folks are familiar with the pond itself, the pond has herbaceous fringe to it and then becomes a dense woody thicket along its perimeter. The proposed house location, the proposed house itself is somewhat centrally located. The house is outside the 100-foot buffer zone, and we did a little inset here because of the scale of the plan. So what we're showing is house outside the 100-foot buffer zone, a pervious patio, a pool, cabana, and a detached garage. Given the site topography, areas down gradient of the pool and garage will be regraded. That's a 3-to-1 slope. We're proposing to how we've handled this in the past. Similarly, at the toe of the slope, there will be a at least 6-inch berm to contain some runoff or overflow. The slope itself is going to be stabilized by a biodegradable erosion control blanket. The area will be reseeded with a native warm season grass mix and planted up with bayberry, high bush blueberry, and arrowwood shrubs. The fence around the perimeter of the pool is located upgraded in the 50-foot buffer zone to the BVW associated with the pond. The revegetation areas within that fenced-in area would be maintained in some respects, but areas outside of that would be left to naturalize. Septic location is shown outside the 100-foot buffer zone as well. In the pool, there's greater than a 20-foot separation between the pool elevation and the pond or water level. So we're going to meet the 2-foot separation there. Obviously less than 50% alteration between the 25 to 50 foot. Just the limit of work just encroaches into the 50 foot a little bit just to get that 3-to-1 slope. And we would anticipate typical conditions associated with monitoring, temporary drip line irrigation or directional spray. And the irrigation will be temporary to help establish the vegetation ensure slope stability. You know, we could submit annual monitoring reports associated with that. There would be subsurface electric line running out to Cliff Road. Some minimal improvements to the driveway itself up to Cliff, just maintaining it to a 10-foot width. And then there's an access easement to the Founders Group cemetery that will be maintained as well. That's kind of the highlights of the scope of the work. Let's turn over to questions.
I think in reality, if this site were to get developed with a pool and kind of laid out like this, you'd probably be coming back for some retaining wall considerations, especially if
Not
that
bad idea.
pool is going in on what will be sort of virgin soil. If that's going to be coming out, I think there's going to be, as far as the structural engineering of it would require probably some sort of concrete wall that would be down to below existing frost. So I think there'd probably be some need for a beam, and at that point, probably want to incorporate some sort of retaining wall in there.
And I did raise that with the engineer, and for this purpose, it's being shown as a continuous regraded slope at 3-to-1. If that does evolve and change, we'll be back before you. But so there'll certainly be room outside the 50-foot to accommodate.
Mm-hmm.
So to clarify too, that if a retaining wall did come in, because it's not part of the original proposal,
Yeah.
that would require an amended order of conditions.
Sure,
with
sure.
The
Mhm.
public hearing
We agree.
process for it.
Yep. I just wanted to get it sort of on record.
So excuse my ignorance, but on the plan where it says proposed house TOF 34, what does that mean?
Top of foundation.
Thank you.
Is the, I mean, at present, you can do that, you can walk that whole cart path. Would this be closed off at this section? To the, is there an easement all the way over to the other,
Well,
Yeah.
the easement
Goes to the
yeah,
graveyard.
just goes to the.
at the present, there's that trail and then there's picnic benches and, so I wasn't sure, so if the easement would be kept, would be nice.
They
I-
won't get the full property value if it is, so I'm thinking it's gonna be.
Well, the neighbors,
That's why there's a
just a
pool
couple of
almost
neighbors that
comes
have it
out
right
there.
in front of their house
Yeah.
down there. Does, because of the pre-existing cart path, is the septic system unable to sort of be put under it? Is that something that would be, or is there a setback from the property line? I know it's at the 100, but given the proximity to the pond.
I don't think the existing cart path or path that's there
Mhm.
is an impediment or impinges on locating the septic system.
Yeah, I'm just, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can see the system itself hasn't been designed.
Right, I understand. So,
So,
make a
some
great
encouragement
clubhouse.
to locate that more up gradient if
Yes.
didn't proceed forward.
I think I have to agree with Ben with the grading
Mhm.
on this going down to the pond. I'm concerned with the amount of runoff, even with like a 6-inch sill that you're gonna get.
Yeah, I'd be uncomfortable permitting it with just slopes coming off of this house. I mean, I see that you have the infiltrators and stuff.
Yeah, the burn is a good idea.
But I just don't think would be enough.
Is the concern during construction, post-construction?
Yeah,
Both.
really
I'm thinking
both.
post too.
Until any plants would be established. I mean, you need those big shrubs to.
It just seems like it needs to be sort of terraced a bit, at least beyond the 50, and then maybe planted on in a terraced condition rather than just coming off of 30 down to 20. Right? You're 32 to 20 down at the bottom of your slope, right? Your patio is at 30, elevation 32. Your slab is at 33, so it's 13 feet.
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly amend the plan. I mean, I think we tried to keep a relatively simplistic approach here
Yeah.
and keep it naturalized.
Yeah.
I think the engineer, I had that conversation with RAC, and they were comfortable with that regraded slope. Certainly it would require a higher level of construction monitoring to make sure that the erosion controls are properly installed and maintained, and you're looking for any washouts or signs thereof. But if it's the commission's desire to have that plan of record and show a terrace.
I'm working on Eel Point now. We permitted this. Has anybody seen that huge slope off of Eel Point Road we permitted a while back? And you're just like, well, that looks okay as a slope, but you should take a ride out there. And I was really uncomfortable driving past this property. Not that it has any real bearing on this, but just as an example, you see a slope of that's was this a 3 to 1? That's about what that was, I think. And it's extreme. And you say, how is that going to ever hold anything? I mean, maybe eventually it will, but not until the damage is done, I think, down gradient. So.
Yeah, and that's why definitely a biodegradable
Soil
erosion
stabilizer
would be necessary up until the grass starts to germinate. But,
I'm just uncomfortable sort of memorializing this as a
An okay permit.
an option for construction.
I mean, is that something that you'd be comfortable conditioning to come back with a terrace plan
Yeah, I mean,
prior to construction?
I think I'd probably be comfortable with that.
Yeah, my concern mostly was the plantings and making sure there was just it wasn't just clean lawn, something to slow the water down.
Yeah, no, I mean, this was everything cross-hatched is intended to just be naturalized.
Yeah.
So certainly very small, if any, lawn footprint we propose, and I failed to mention this. Considering those slopes, we are proposing a subsurface infiltration chamber between the pool and the garage that collect the pool patio runoff, and from the structures themselves, trying to avoid any runoff going down that slope.
Yeah.
Post-development.
So when the natural heritage map that shows the estimated habitat of rare wildlife, which appears to sort of go right up to where you want to put the pool, what rare wildlife are we talking about?
I'm not 100% sure. I think there certainly are, I believe, some rare plants along that shoreline, that herbaceous edge, but there may be some insects, invertebrates associated with it.
So are they signing off on this? Or?
It is, I'd have to double check again, but I'm pretty sure that it is outside of.
Yeah, if it's outside of estimated habitat, then the notice doesn't need to be reviewed by them.
And is it actually outside of the estimated habitat?
Correct.
Yes. And to find out what the species are in there, a lot of times you have to file an information request with them to get the actual details.
And what about priority habitat? Is that the same, that's just advisory rather than a mandatory?
No, we have filed a separate MESA project review for this application because it is in priority habitat based on conversation I had with staff that this general area is mapped for one rare moth, and a single family dwelling of this size and scope isn't gonna trigger any red flags for them.
Is it a moth that likes to do laps in the morning?
Not the lights, any lights,
Wow.
really mess with.
And so
Any
yeah,
mosquito spray that properties like this will do illegally.
and so yeah, exterior lighting,
Okay.
that typical condition, we would expect that as well.
For a moment, I thought you were going to propose this for the Anglers Club. I was like, whoa.
I'd almost rather them be using the
I
space
know.
than selling it off with a pool.
I know.
plan.
I know. It's nice. There's not a lot of structures up against that pond. But
Honestly, I would still rather have a retaining wall on this permit, not a condition to come back with it.
well, you could tear it. I think the terracing is not a bad idea because I
Either
understand the
one.
visual too, but the terracing is a good idea too, though. Because you could have potentially, other than you have infiltrators, but in the wintertime, you could see you have sheeting across that, patio.
I mean, it's a tough one. I think terracing, I'm saying conflicting sort of things here, but terracing is gonna be not great to look at, but I think it's a better condition
I
for
think it'll look
slope.
better than a big retaining wall, though.
It'll let the
Well, no,
water
it's
Aesthetic.
certainly terracing, but I mean,
Right.
I'm just
It'll
saying,
be
you're
multiple.
gonna be
Yeah.
looking at something rather than a vegetated slope across, but I think
Right.
it's a better way to deal with that much of a slope.
Right.
And then the roots can actually establish on these plants.
So, I think it's, I just think it's kinda incomplete. I think the plan's incomplete.
Other thoughts? Concerns? Questions from the public? Oh, please.
Stephen Cohen, because I know usually on the other side of this, it's a little fun for me, but I represent actually 3 of the abutters who I've gotten frantic phone calls from that are very concerned about this. And, I understand what's going on here, and that, it's not up to you to decide if you think this should be developed or shouldn't be. Unfortunately, I don't think you necessarily have the ability to shut it down, but I do think there are a couple of important questions that you should be asking. And, I've learned a couple of lessons over the years, and one of them is that, I think Brian does great work, and I send him a lot of work, and I'm always happy with his work, but when we were dealing with the Fraser property, it seemed like there was a wide selection of interpretations for where the hydric soils begin and end, and where the wetland plants begin for a boundary, and I think that it would be really important here to have either a third party or the Conservation Commission or somebody double check that, whether it means requiring the applicant to do some more test pits to show that they've properly shown the end of the wetland boundary. I think pushing that boundary to the most appropriate place would be important. So I would defer to you. Do you want my client to hire somebody? Do you want to require the applicant to do it? I'm not. I trust Brian, but I think it would be good to get some other test samples and photographs, and maybe have the Concom's consultant go and double check it, just to make sure we're getting the right boundary. That's one thing. The second thing is that, because this is an exercise to prove buildability, which is essentially an exercise to prove marketability, I think it's an opportunity for you to express your concerns about wetland scenic views. This particular location is the highest spot in the area and the most prominent, essentially looming over the pond. So I think having you opine on what may or may not be appropriate there should go beyond just the footprint of a building. In some circumstances, you have told people you can only have one level, you can only have so much. We're gonna want to see you mitigate the impact of the wetland scenic views. And I think that based on the proximity of the pond, presumably, you would impose restrictions later when someone actually came in with a real house plan. So I would defer to the commission as to what kind of additional thoughts you might have on that issue as well.
Yeah. There is no generic plan for this. It's just a footprint, right? Yeah, I mean, that would be my concern as well, but without seeing one.
And I guess, you could opine on both, not only the type of the house, the size or the scope of the house, but also the location. You could require it to be, somewhere less impactful.
Well, there's a significant property on the west side of Nancy's property.
Right.
Is that the Hollins property? It used to be anyway?
Yes. Now the Hale property.
Now the Hale property, yeah.
I don't think there was any wetland scenic view issue when that was approved.
Well,
Although-
I would say that property is not part of this application.
Right.
Well, it is indirectly, as we're talking
Yeah.
about wetland scenic views. And so, as to what has already impacted the view, well, I happen to feel they wove it in quite carefully, actually.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'd have to see a a drawing before, but I mean, we could definitely show it as a concern. I can't see anywhere on this interesting plot that would be any less visual. But, Cormac, you have a question?
Mr. Chairman, Cormac Collier, Nantucket Land Council. Hopefully with my remarks, I can still participate in the Inshore Classic next year. But we all have a job to do.
Don't hold your breath.
I didn't do so well this year. So. I think I'm going to approach this in my comments to you with some context of you not only being a permitting authority, but in your statutory abilities to look at conservation as a whole on the island. That was essentially the role of the COMCOM before the Wetlands Act got put into place. Looking at properties, looking at restrictions, essentially coming up with a framework and a plan for conservation of the island. Obviously, that's then taken the roles of my organization, the Foundational Land Bank, have sort of played into that in terms of taking that role, but I still think there is definitely a role for you, the COMCOM being the town representative. The reason why I'm saying this is that looking at this application just on its face, it's very frustrating because this property was always considered conservation land because of the gift in 2001 to the Nantucket Scholarship Fund, and then subsequently that transferred to the Nantucket Anglers Club Conservation Inc., which was even more solid because their purpose is to protect property, provide educational opportunities, propagate fish and wildlife, etc. The only thing we thought was going to happen was a clubhouse was going to be built on this property. We, the royal we, meaning Foundation, myself, Land Bank, all the conservation groups, is what we brainstormed out of this. I understand why they're doing this. They're trying to establish value that will hopefully then result in a conservation goal, end goal. But in my opinion, this isn't necessarily the way to do it because in my opinion, this property should have been treated as protected if this nonprofit truly was going to live up to its standards. Not the Nantucket Anglers Club, the Nantucket Anglers Club Conservation Inc., which is, as Kevin related to you, a 501c3 that has to file 990s every year, which this property is mentioned. So there is a role for you. It might not be within this context in terms of a permanent context, but certainly I think there should be a role for you to be concerned about this. Now, if they sell this property, use those funds to buy another property that has similar or a better conservation values, then it's understandable. Nonprofits do that in the Commonwealth. Sometimes they do that. I just find it very difficult when you're dealing with the Maxey Pond watershed, which is almost 3/4 of the entire pond shore, to find a property with similar conservation values. That's what I wanted to say, Kevin, because it is frustrating. I understand your end game, but if the prices don't work out, this property is going to be developed. And another property hopefully will be put into protection, but I can't imagine with what you sell this for that you're going to get something of equal conservation value. Thank you.
So, Cormac, all right, you know, I think we're all sympathetic to the shoehorn speech, you know, because that's what's happening on this island. Is properties are getting shoehorned in everywhere, but we're a regulatory body. As far, correct me if I'm wrong, you know, so I constantly go home practically weeping, you know, but just bound by the regulations.
I would encourage you to read your enabling legislation. There's a lot more than a permitting body. In many other municipalities that don't have conservation foundations, land councils, or land banks, Conservation Commission plays the role of all three. Potentially not necessarily on the advocacy side, because then you'd be walking back and forth, but you're certainly on the side in terms of land preservation, community planning. In your enabling legislation, you actually have the authority to create the open space and recreation plan. Unfortunately, that was written by the planning board, but that's your responsibility to write that. So I really encourage you to go to Mass General Law. I can't remember the chapter, but it's there for you.
I will do so.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate what Cormac says, and to be blunt, NAC Conservation Inc. would be happy to sell this property for fair market value to the Conservation Foundation, with the Land Council, with a land bank, who could keep it open. Say that right now publicly. But as a practical matter, to follow Cormac's logic here, it means that this asset can't provide any benefit to NAC Conservation to go somewhere else and to build a clubhouse. And that so-called deed from Nantucket Sportsman's Club to NAC Scholarship and the subsequent deed specifically says the gift doesn't prohibit the construction of a clubhouse. There's a practical problem now for the Anglers Club where it is. We have to address that problem. So, again, the NAC Conservation would be happy to convey to someone who wanted to keep it open and pay the right price for it. But I agree with Mr. Golden. This is a regulatory commission. It's not a planning and control commission. And we're asking you to treat this application, this notice, like you would any other residential notice of intent. With respect to it, amending the plan, as we said, if you want us to come in with an amended plan showing terracing or a wall, we will be happy to. And we're open to other suggestions you might have. But I don't think it would be fair to treat this notice of intent differently from the others that you consider.
So you said this property has a deed restriction to build a clubhouse?
Doesn't have a deed restriction. I think I want to kind of blare that and beat a drum on it. There's language in the original deed, precatory language, it's not binding. It says that this should be used for conservation and won't prohibit the construction of a clubhouse by either NAC Conservation or the Nantucket Anglers Club. And again, as I said at the outset, the intention here is, first and foremost, for NAC Conservation Inc. to retain the proceeds from the sale of this asset. We're not giving them away, not diverting them. Buy another parcel with conservation value to build a clubhouse and to lease it to the Anglers Club. And I've discussed this with the Attorney General, and the Assistant Attorney General I spoke to is fine with it. So it's legal, it's what we want to do, and frankly, to tie the hands of NAC Conservation by saying you can't develop this property, I don't think it would be fair.
Is there a potential for this lot, though not really in our purview, but I'm curious, is there a potential for this lot to be subdivided?
No.
Or tertiary dwellings added?
For Brian, I think it would be highly unlikely.
But legally possible?
Right, if you sold the property.
Well, it's 13 acres.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
I think to answer that, if that was a concern, I certainly would advise my client in marketing the property to restrict it against further subdivision.
So actually put a conservation restriction
We'd have
on
a
it with one of
condition.
our land organizations?
No, perhaps. There's a tax benefit there. But I think that's getting pretty far afield.
Well, I know, that's what I said, it's
You know,
not
this is
saying,
a
but it's,
regulatory board looking at a notice of intent.
If we
Not
just,
more than that.
yeah, if we just stick with the area within your
Yeah.
jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Because I think that, there are concerns with this that are outside it that we don't need to get into. But I do think that you could take the highest level of scrutiny on whether or not the wetland boundary has been properly determined at the most appropriate location. And you could take the highest level of scrutiny as to what level of development you would see appropriate for this particular location. I do agree with Ian that the Hale property across the lot is one in which the house has been hidden, and I think that is, if the commission was going to say, okay, we would want you to take actions to make sure that this property was also not a looming house over the pond. Some of that is in footprint, some of that is in height, some of that is in materials. You could preface you could have a decision that says, whatever is built here has to be limited so that it doesn't have certain impacts.
right.
Those are discernible facts that you would be able to regulate.
I want to defend Mr. Madden, whom you know well.
Oh, yeah.
You know his work for 15 years. You know his reliability, delineating wetland boundaries. I understand what Mr. Cohen is saying about having a second look here, but I'm going to stand here and say I trust Brian Madden's word implicitly. If anything else, he's conservative. I've looked at other wetland boundary delineators, and he's better than all of them. So,
Before we get too far, I can tell you, we've reviewed the wetland boundary on the field, and reviewed the soil data provided, and done some extra plots. I can tell you that the soil plot that was done is the one that's directly in front of the house. And we checked it both sides. We've checked our records on the wetland line that's here, and it's fairly consistent with ones that have been approved before. It's a site that there's a pretty significant break in slope from
Right.
the vegetated wetland area to the upland area, and it's a pretty distinct break. I think we'll feel pretty confident that the wetland line for the vegetated wetland there is correct. The pond level obviously fluctuates a bit given time of year.
I was
So,
wondering about that.
it stays within, doesn't show any signs. There's no staining of leaves or marks or lenticels on plants or anything that looks like it creeps up the slope beyond the vegetated wetland boundary. But I would feel comfortable with this line, and I know our review, we didn't have any questions for those areas. And the form that was provided is relevant to the project area specifically. But in looking at other areas when you come onto the site, it's fairly consistent throughout, and our few checks on soils are fairly consistent condition-wise, so I would feel comfortable with that boundary.
Yeah, also, house designs, I don't feel comfortable stipulating a height. I would more feel comfortable seeing a drawing of a house and visualizing.
Window-wise,
I mean, I think maybe could we stipulate just that the structure would have to come in front of us?
So
For-
the way we've dealt with building envelope questions before, we've kind of looked at it in a sense of requiring before work started to come back in for amended orders to condition the specific site impacts that are in question. So whether it's the house or pool or garage or whatever it is that it's before work starts, as those plans are
Right.
developed, you're coming back not to file a minor modification, but to file an amended order, because then that section of that permit reopens itself up to appeal. So
Right.
it's something where if those house plans are developed, they would have to come back and amend the permit, and then at that point, you can recondition that aspect of the project, and apply the performance standards to that.
I think
that
that would be,
condition would be acceptable to my client.
I think that would be critical.
Yeah,
That
'cause
also, that also requires a butter re-notification and notice to the
Yeah.
neighbor too, so, short of filing a new notice of intent, that's about as extreme as it gets for
Yeah.
requiring permits to come back.
Yeah, I agree with what Steve said about, given the nature of this area, we basically are permitting a house and a pool here without seeing any design of what it might look like. And this is an area where wetland scenic views would be important. And I would feel much more comfortable if this was just permitting a building envelope, and then we could say no work is allowed by this order, but we're permitting it, to me, it looks like we're permitting a house and a pool.
Yep.
And
It could be if you didn't have a condition like that.
And I wonder, can we condition this that says no actual work is permitted by this order?
You could say, until final design plans are provided to the commission to review for all development aspects, through an amended order of conditions, no work is permitted, but you're approving an area. It's not something we've really done that many times.
Well, I would think, some of the work should be able to go forward, like installation of a septic system. It has nothing to do with scenic views.
Well, it's
If you want to
it's
limit it
outside
to-
our perimeter jurisdiction. then.
Outside of jurisdiction.
Is there a septic on here?
Up in
Yeah.
the, next to the car color.
What
You know,
worries me
I
is
think
that
a
this-
condition that says that the final design plans have to be submitted and approved before work begins is a fair condition.
Which in reality, if this ever moves forward for actual development, the
That's
plan is
happening.
gonna change.
Yeah.
They're gonna
Right.
need to come back before you.
Yeah, sell it.
I would agree that, you know, that as a second best choice, you know, dealing with, to deal with this now, that the condition that Jeff suggested, you know, makes sense as a, you know, protection down the line in case this ever really does get developed.
Right.
As well as the requirement that Ben brought up about, you know, dealing with the sloping and terracing.
Folded into that.
Yeah, I think that's, puts us a little more control.
I think to be fair, the house that's shown here is located outside of jurisdiction, so it's
Right.
kind of dealing with it in that regards as well.
I know. That's, okay. Other thoughts or questions? Okay.
I hope you find your all generous million.
I know. Come on, town.
Just a million?
Work up the money. Just a million? No kidding. Any more questions from the public? Okay, seeing not, Jeff, we have everything we need.
You have all of the required information.
Do you want an amended plan? Or do you want to?
Well, yeah, what's the general feeling about the, well, I think that sort of gets covered in the,
I think if we go with Jeff's,
yeah, I think we're kind of,
we're covered.
yeah. It's all gonna come back in front of us again if something actually happens, because
We're still
otherwise
waiting for
it's just a waste of someone's time drawing it. Okay.
So they can't do any clearing or anything else either, right? I just don't want the slope to get cleared and kind of.
No, because the way that condition reads is prior to
They
the
can't do
start
anything.
of any work, they would need to then. They'd have to come in for relief from that condition before they start, because they have to let us know if they're gonna start work.
So essentially, there's just what are we permitting here, an envelope?
An envelope.
Just
an
a,
envelope.
just an idea.
Okay.
An idea.
Right.
No permanent.
Okay.
Motion to close that.
Yep. Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Let me see. Okay. So we're gonna go back to Hagenbart.
Oh, yeah, sorry,
Hagenbart. Yeah.
Hagenbart.
Yeah.
This is Hagenbart, 6 Wall Street, and Hagenbart is 31. The spa.
Alrighty.
No, yes, the spa.
Jeff Blackwolf, the applicant. We received your input at the first public hearing 2 meetings ago, and have submitted revised drawings which eliminate the expansion, proposed expansion of the deck and the spa element, as we heard you loud and clear on that. The remaining elements from the original submission are the proposed installation underground propane tank along Wall Street, which is within storm storage, but not the vegetated wetland buffer zone. The other elements are infilling of the existing hedge. It's just some of the old growth that has died, and they want to infill for more density along the existing privet, and the and reconstruction of the existing fences. So those are the elements that remain from the original notice of intent.
Questions? Concerns?
Not now.
Better
now. Much better now.
Any questions from our dwindling public? Okay. Seeing not, Jeff, we have everything we need to close?
We do.
And you'd like to close? For sure. Have a motion?
Move to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, amended orders of conditions, Grell, 21 Field Avenue.
All right, just for the record, this is where, I know Commissioner Steinauer and I did a field meeting yesterday, and Commissioner Shampoo.
Oh, sorry about that.
Interviewing,
Today.
today.
Oh,
Not gonna show this.
I showed up on Monday, down to the Natural Resource Building.
You're off, man. That's what you're way off this week.
I'm down there going, oh yeah, well, it was King Day. I remember somebody saying something about it. I was like, what is wrong with it?
Thank you. For the record, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors on behalf of the property owner and applicant, Tim and Susan Grell. This was an application, an amended order of conditions that was before you for the relocation of an existing driveway and construction of a 12 by 35 foot pool outside of the 50-foot no build, but inside of the 100-foot regulated setback on the subject property. As a matter of fact, the entire property itself is essentially, for all practical purposes, completely located within the 100-foot jurisdictional setback to a vegetated wetland that runs along a pond. Property is located at the intersection of Morgan Square, Field Ave, and Folger Avenue. We actually made a presentation in the last meeting. I think Ian did not participate. Joe was here, I think, for that meeting. And after some discussion, we focused on a letter that had been sent in by the Callahans, and it was determined that maybe a site visit was a good idea. I did have the owner fly in yesterday. He was on site. Jeff was there. Ernie was there, and I believe some of you have kind of seen the site on your own. And that had to do specifically with the issues raised by the Callahans in the letter that they had submitted, which I don't know if Gretchen was going to talk or not here, but Gretchen Callahan is here. She's the one who sent the letter. Gretchen was at the site visit yesterday. Didn't participate in the visit, but we did have a conversation out on the road prior to the site visit. We do have our DEP file number. It does not require review through NHESP, so there's no requirement there. And happy to answer any questions that you may have. To kind of give you a recap of maybe yesterday and the site visit, Ernie and Jeff can kind of talk about it too. Property was owned by the Grells for approximately 2 years. I think it's safe to say that within recently there was there was a pruning, I guess, if you will, within the area of the 25 and the area in this particular area here that you saw from some of the side of the photos in this particular area here. There are, when you walk the property, areas where trees had been removed. You can clearly see where stumps have been cut, but those had been done prior to the Grells purchasing the property. So there was some removal of trees at some point, but that has not occurred since the Grells have owned the property. I think through Jeff, through Ernie, through our discussions, I think the Grells are well aware now of what the regulations are with regard to even pruning of the 25-foot no disturb. The area itself, as you can see, is pretty much somewhat of a developed lawn down to the area of the pond. The area itself currently is on an on-site subsurface sewage disposal, and the recent development of the property over on Morgan Square, this property is now in the sewer district. There is a sewer line coming down Field Avenue that our intent is to take the property off of an on-site septic and tie the property into the sewer system. That makes the driveway relocation a little bit more feasible because the driveway would go in the area, would cross over a part of the original septic system, and we wouldn't have to replace or change that. We just would be connecting into the sewer system. We did ask for a waiver based on groundwater separation, whereas the deep end of the pool would not be in the groundwater. It would be through the construction process, would be less than the 2-foot separation based on both the elevation of the pond and soil testing that was done when the septic system was installed. So happy to answer any questions that you may have. There is an open order. We were before you for expansion of the decking on the south side of the house. And that's why I filed this as an amended order of condition. That work has been done, but we have not closed out that permit yet. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I apologize for not getting to your viewing, by the way. Sorry about that, guys.
That's okay.
Thrown off.
Ernie was there.
Yep.
Some of them say.
Okay.
Just a comment that I think if we could put a order or a condition in that the 25-foot buffer be allowed to regrow, because he didn't, I mean, he trimmed it, but it didn't look like he disturbed soil, so he's clipped things back. But you can still see the shrub, you know, the shrub stems are there, and I think they'll
Come right back.
resprout, and we had quite a discussion with him, and he seemed very willing to do that.
So I thought about it after that visit too, and I think it'd be a spot where, kind of in keeping with our past practice, would be to require that permanent marker to be installed, but then for the remainder of the life of the permit, to require the applicant to submit kind of a photos and monitoring reports at the beginning. I think in the case where kind of beginning, middle, and end of the growing season, and then for us to do viewings as we deem necessary based
Make sure it
upon
comes back.
that coming in,
Yeah.
and it's not being pruned or maintained. That being said, I think, I was gonna talk about it later, administrative report, but I'll talk about it now. I think there's a separate issue going on with the actual road that services the property of Market Square that we looked at, with some sedimentation getting into the two separate sections of pond. There's kind of a piece to the north, and then the roadway divides it to the south. I was gonna talk about potentially sending some sort of letter to homeowners to see if we can get some sort of commonality for a way to bring that road into better condition to prevent that, to help mitigate that impact to the two pieces of the pond. It's pretty significant on both sides. There's pretty heavy scouring from the road. It's kind of separate from this application, but it's definitely something that is having an impact to that resource area, and something that I think we could facilitate being corrected to the point where it's working better. So, that's kind of my thoughts after visiting the site again and listening to Ernie's comments, and kind of reviewing all the information that dealing with that permanent marker and monitoring, and then dealing with the roadway separately for the people that use that roadway to access the site. And I would also recommend a condition that any construction vehicle or landscaping service servicing the site comes down the Field Avenue side instead of trying to come around through that area, making that worse, especially excavation equipment and that kind of, just to try to limit that traffic through there.
It's gonna be a tough one to enforce.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, well, you can put it on there, and hopefully if they get notice and you go down and do inspections during the actual project, and a little bit of due diligence from everyone in the area, and kind of at least having it noticed that it's something people are paying attention to. Hopefully we can correct it.
So I'm sorry I couldn't make the site visit either, because I wanted to see this one. My questions, I have a few. One, would you be willing to switch this privet out for cedar or something that has a little more habitat value within the 50?
Did I show proposed privet there, or did I?
Yeah, it's
Oh, yeah, I'm sure, any condition that you put, the landscape, yes, I would think we have an issue right there. Right now, that's just, this post and rail and nothing else there.
And then it says to provide wire fencing on the existing post and rail, and I'm just wondering where that will
In between
stop, because
the pond.
yeah, we don't want wire preventing things from getting to and from the pond.
That actually probably, they've committed to a auto cover, so.
The ridge.
A child is going to drown.
I know, but this is gonna be.
It's such a bad.
They're gonna pull it.
I don't understand the auto cover, I don't understand the building, I don't, but.
That's bizarre.
To me, I understand from a building permit, they could permit it, I don't understand how insurance companies
No, I think it's
are
okay.
allowing it, but yes, we could, it would have to stop at the 50, yes, that would be, that was the intent, was to block off that upper side. Because the pond is actually a natural buffer on the, you'd have to, the kids would have, some would have to come in through the pond and then up into the property to get to the pool, if you didn't block it off that way, but.
Sorry, we'll have the magical auto cover, safely there.
No, don't worry.
So, but to answer your question, you could certainly condition that privet be a native species, so you could probably see something like a plethora or a berry or something like that. Plethora has become all of the rage for property screening lately.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not a cultivar with that.
Question for Ernie, did the the pine tree trimmings, was it look like it was just cutting a dead growth, or was it pretty excessive?
Well, they were trimmed up some, but,
Yeah.
it's hard to tell.
Yeah,
But it was low on the trees. I
Right.
mean, it was up to about head height or so, but that's all.
A lot of the,
yeah,
a
It's
lot
a
of the
view
cutting
shed,
that.
yeah.
the nature
that
of
we
those
saw on
trees
the-
too,
the
though.
pine trees too, is a lot of it has been along the actual traveled way.
Yeah.
There's been some cutting. I'm sure that's related to vehicle access for this side, sides across that way.
A lot of people are doing this slimming up. It's really bad.
Yeah,
For habitat reasons, for water reasons, you take away those branches from slowing down rain, nutrient cycling. I mean, you want to keep them there.
You could certainly put a condition in that no further vista cutting is permitted, so.
Yeah.
That would be good.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, I think the Grells, this is not the first time Jeff's been on the site. This came up when the Stevens, and last time we came in, there was some questions and we talked to them, so
Well, to be
Jeff's
fair,
been there, Ernie's been there, I think.
I spoke
Moving
to
forward, they
someone
fully
too.
cannot complain ignorance at this point. I'll tell you right
I will
now.
also say,
And then, you know, the Callahan's are right across the street too.
I have spoken to the previous owner on this site as well.
Yeah,
okay.
I think the previous owner was only there for a short time. I think it was, property was, I believe, this was another foreclosure. Actually, this was a foreclosure. Went to somebody, I think they might have flipped it, and then that's how Grell ended up with it. So I think the other owner was there for a short period of time.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions? Or thoughts? Okay. Questions from the public?
Gretchen Callahan. I just,
Could-
you want me
Is
to
that,
talk
can you
about-
pick that up from, well, yeah, probably best, the microphone.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for coming and viewing and listening, because this property has just been denuded, in my opinion. We never were able to see the house from our property, and now it's just there. So anything you can do to, you know, whether he has to send photos to, so that everybody knows he's not doing it anymore, I would appreciate. I did speak with him. He does seem to not be repentant, but understands that what he's done is not right.
Right. Where's your property in relation to this? Just out of curiosity.
Where are we? Field and Flood,
Yeah.
right over here.
Yeah,
And there is, this property over here on Morgan Square
Mhm.
was subdivided. They're building 2 large houses, 2 pools.
Yeah.
And this road, as you were saying before, really needs to be addressed with the traffic. And if you could alert the, excuse me, the Bossities, I think it is, or Best Company, that road shouldn't be traveled. They really need to come down this way.
okay, great,
Because it's sinking into the pond.
yeah, washing away.
It's bad down
Yeah.
there.
It's some really bad gullying through
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
It's-
Big gully going way up the hill and everything.
Yeah.
In the middle of the road. even.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah,
But anyway, thank you for your
thank you
time.
very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Well, no other concerns. Would someone like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. Motion to approve, and then we can condition it.
For a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously.
You guys want to talk about conditioning on that later? In the order of conditions?
Yeah.
Alright, perfect.
Okay. So, Kimball Sherburne LLC, 9 Kimball Ave. Sandra Fencing.
Thank you. For the applicant, Kimball Sherburne LLC, Paul Santos from Nantucket Surveyors. This is an application for Sandra Fencing. This is an application that mimics the abutting property that was just issued an order of conditions for 7 Kimball Avenue. 7 Kimball Avenue is right here. We just recently permitted a permanent zigzag sand drift fencing, if you will, along the base of the dune beach interface. This is an extension of that, if you will, a mimicking of that same application, which was right here. 7 Kimball is to the west of this property. 9 Kimball is here. Again, it's virtually the same application. It does require filing with NHESP. This one has been filed. I have not received a comment letter, but what we did was we modified. This plan was filed just after we received the permit for 17, so we've modified this fencing to be in accordance with the fencing on 17 Kimball. And I don't think you were here at that last meeting, but what we've got, the state came out for the first time under the sand drift fencing with very specific requirements with regard to the size of the posts, cutting the angle of the top of the post to a certain angle to stop predatory birds from perching on them. So the state has there was a pretty detailed description on the construction of the fencing. So we've incorporated that into this application. So it's essentially the same exact application. And again, this is 9 Kimball Avenue, which is the old Scaife property, which is currently being completed. It's been renovated. There's a set of beach stairs that are currently being finished up, and we'll be putting the zigzag drift fencing at the bottom of the at the bottom of the interface between the dune and the beach. Happy to answer any questions that you may have. I do not have the letter from NHESP on this one, so we will be asking for a continuance. But this one I have done as an amended order of conditions to the order we had for the construction of the beach stairs.
Okay.
So that's what we're looking at.
So if we're waiting for a letter.
For you, was the paddleboard storage detail on the original beach stairs?
Yeah. Well, it was an amended. We did it as a I think a minor mod as an amended. Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah. This detail here.
Yeah, I'm surprised I let that one through.
Yeah.
Because I think paddleboard stored in the middle of the dune. I feel like we missed that.
Well, it's on the.
Yeah, but it's still within the dune field. Like if you look at wetland scenic views and those things.
It's kind of a deceiving because that's in the hole.
Down the hole.
Yeah.
That's in the hole after. So, but it was done as an amended. We did come back with it. Yeah. You can't see that from the beach.
Yeah.
It's dune here, but really it's the bottom of the coastal bank. There's like a
There's
hole
a gully there.
in that area.
I still think the stairs are for access, not for storage. I missed that one, certainly.
Okay.
So that's intriguing. So they're going to propose that you have to have an angle cut on the banisters going down on steps to beaches and that sort of
No,
thing?
well, in this case, on the steps I haven't seen yet, but on the zigzag fencing, they were very specific about it.
Right.
Yeah, 45. It's actually written on.
I know.
Yeah, 45 angle.
I'm just gonna go out on record and say their heart is in a good place.
But they obviously aren't birders.
Completely inconceivable.
I know.
Because
They'll stand on the
they're-
picket.
they'll be on the other posts or the cross member.
Yep.
You're not diminishing any availability of purchase.
Yeah.
You're just making you do a lot more coverage. And it's,
Oh well.
I don't get it, but
I get the concept, but yeah.
again, their heart is in the right place, and it's an interesting thought, but the way those fences are constructed, they're certainly not diminishing the
It's a
ability
perfect perch.
No,
to perch. And they'll perch on the top of those 45s, too.
Yeah.
I guarantee you.
Quite well. On one
We'll
toe.
get a picture of it. I guarantee you we can get a bird perched on like every post by the end of the summer.
Okay. So we're waiting for the letter from the state on this one? Okay.
Like I said,
Which will
what
be
I did was
identical
I
to the-
modified based on the 17 letter.
Okay.
Modified the plan, sent it back
Right.
to them. I mean, I'm sure the letter will be the exact same letter, but
Right, I'm sure.
That's what we are waiting for. And I mean, there was a fairly good set of conditions that were
Okay.
attached to that.
I'm sure.
They're crazy.
And they're just making up for something.
It doesn't accomplish what they're setting out to do to decrease predatory purchase, because there's another like 400 predatory purchase in that same stretch.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I think what they did,
We're just going to confuse those predators. They won't know where to perch with so many choices.
I know.
There's the new one.
We
I don't know. It's so good.
What's that?
predatory birds. I thought we supposed to.
Actually, you know what they would probably do better?
No, here.
If they put a
we're-
pole
here
up
within
outside of
Titled
the
Chapter.
habitat area.
Oh,
They would go
yeah.
to the pole outside the habitat area.
I mean,
don't need
crows
any more
will perch
birds
on
on
all
golf.
things that are 1 inch square. Crows will perch on anything.
They'll put spikes on it, I guess.
So without the letter, I mean, general, just get a
Paul
consensus of
has
the board?
requested a
Continuation, okay, I was about to
But if
say,
you
because
had
I
a
don't think there's gonna be,
consensus or we're looking for additional feedback, it'd be.
I don't think, is anyone looking for any other information? I think this is pretty straightforward. And the state is taking care of it anyway, so. So I think you probably have a pretty good one. Okay, so you want to continue for 2 weeks on this one as well? Okay.
I'll probably get a letter of complaint in like 3 days, somehow they heard that I thought. You'll concede.
We're impressed. How about that?
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a good time to buy stock in like saw blades, because they're gonna be.
Like I say.
Hear about the 45-degree cuts.
Yeah, we were discussing this, Zach and I were discussing this. If you put a pole outside the half area, they'll go to
You're
the,
right.
that would actually work better than anything else. Give them higher, just put it outside habitat area and they'll go to that higher pole, guaranteed.
Yeah, it's pretty easy, but still there's a lot of them, so.
Well, I would assume that if they're gonna cut them, they'll probably set their saw, they'll probably just do a
Mm.
chop.
Okay.
Yep.
Because most of those.
It's easy, it's only 4x, we'll chop
I'll
some.
just buy longer poles and chop them in the middle.
It's when you have to do the pylons on the angle.
Yep.
And the same reason.
Okay, minor mods. Moran, 72 Millbrook Road.
Thank you. So this is a minor
Neighbor.
modification to an order of conditions that was just recently issued for construction of a pool and spa at 72 Millbrook Road. All the work was outside of the 50-foot setback, but within the 100-foot regulated setback. So this is a minor mod which reduces the size of the pool and eliminates the spa that was attached to the pool. And we've just, within the confines of the area, just relocated and shifted the program somewhat. Again, within the, outside of the 50, but within that area. But we've done away with the spa, and the pool, I think, is only, it's been reduced from 20 by 40 to 18 by 40. So just, that's minor mod request for that particular purpose. Biggest thing is the spa was being eliminated.
Taken away.
Good.
Seems like an
Overrated.
No offense.
Now, oh, and actually, so we need to drill a new well on the property, and
Oh, yeah,
the well is
front.
within the 100-foot
Yeah.
setback. I put it, they've been having problems with some issues in the backside, so I'm up by Millbrook Road. It's outside, and it's within the 100. So that's why I've added that well. The applicant also proposed to drill a well within the 100-foot buffer zone, so I've incorporated that into the application also.
Move to approve as modified.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Any opposed? No, passes unanimously. Do you have a recommendation for that one, Jeff?
Doesn't make a difference. Well, that's what I would have said.
But that's what Jeff would have
You
said.
don't need my recommendation.
Well, you know, you always think he gets, give him those things. 36 Lily Street, LLC, 36B Lily Street.
Brian Madden from
Nice
LEC.
studio with patio.
That's one.
The project for both lots has now gone through HCC, and ultimately, the end result was a less structural footprint within the 100-foot buffer zone and some minimal reductions in work activity within land subject to flooding of the property. So on the plan, it showed the existing conditions in grade, lighter gray outlines, the previously approved structures in green, including the driveway configuration. But essentially, just to walk you through it, the detached cottage on 36, located east of the primary dwelling, went away. The patio was reconfigured. The driveway was shifted further to the east. Yes, east. And that's where the reduction in the limit of work and work activity within the land subject to flooding, which allowed for the restoration area to expand out a little bit further. And then the structures on 36B, previously the existing garage carriage house was being renovated, and then there was gonna be a larger addition. Those two things have been separated out, so the garage is just gonna be on slab, it just got rotated. The pervious parking area will be in between, and then a much smaller detached cottage is on the, just straddles the 100-foot buffer zone. So, overall improvements.
Thoughts, questions, concerns? Yeah.
Has any restoration started here?
No work has started yet, so. This is nothing with the compensatory storage area or any restoration change aside from that increase.
I think they were waiting to start work. They went through a pretty lengthy agency process.
Yeah.
Is it still owned by Sanford?
36, I don't know what to say. Yeah.
The ownership has not changed, but yes.
Okay. Well, would someone like to make a motion?
Yeah, motion to approve of the minor mod.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Order conditions.
Oh, sorry, I'm gonna hand out
Hagenberg.
some drafts. We'll have some, oh, staple was. They're not long.
I was thinking.
It does, yeah.
Stop it.
Sorry. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I like this.
Here you go, Ben.
Page.
So I know we did Hagenberg.
Thanks.
Hagenberg last, but there's extras, you can just leave them down there and I'll collect them. But Hagenberg was the application that Jeff Blackwell removed the spa and decking from within the flood zone and designated wetland. So it didn't require any waivers anymore. But the one thing that we had talked about last time was for some of the work in it right abuts that Phragmites stand that's there, is giving them the ability to treat the Phragmites that may show up in the lawn or deal with it. So it kept in the condition 19 that if they're gonna herbicide them, they have to provide a copy of the license and then also provide us a report of what they've applied, and then they have to remove the invasive species in the areas, and then there's the no cultivars. Outside of that, we kind of puzzled for conditions.
Okay. Any thoughts, concerns on this? I think that,
Seems pretty straightforward.
yeah, this ball removed is good.
It was nice to actually have an
Motion approved.
listen for once and just be like, okay.
We'll just do it illegally later. Okay.
We'll just take it. Well, the bad news for them is I pretty much drive up Holbert Ave a couple times a day. That
Visible.
Wall Street, kind of pick my way which way I want to go every day. I could be honest and say, especially during fertilizer season, because it's a really easy run to go through those three streets, you can pretty much pick up 5 or 6 companies a day.
Yeah.
I'll
Someone
say.
who's being down there. They might not be putting any fertilizer
Calling
down.
each
but
other.
you can
All right, I
really
got
stop
him.
and see what they're doing.
He's in his office.
Need a siren, a light. Okay,
Jeff
would someone like to make a motion for 6 Wall Street?
Moved issue is drafted.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. Dwortsky, Baines Family Trust, 8 Shakamo Road. Let's see.
So this was the Jeff Blackwell project. That was the, kind of just the restoration project. And I didn't have it on there, but I think after the discussion, I
Fence.
would propose a condition 21 that.
22.
20, 20. 5-foot buffer be?
Yeah, the
Delineated with strip rail fence.
Yeah.
the buffer is to be marked with stripped rail fencing. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Yep.
If they wanna do something different.
As modified.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
If
Passes
they wanna do
unanimously.
something different, just as a
Would.
clarification, sorry, just point of curiosity. If they wanna do something different.
Yeah.
You'd have to come back and
Come back.
modify or amend.
Yep.
Sometimes we give people the choice for some sort of permanent marker, but
On that one, I like that, I like the fence.
Oh, yeah.
Cars can't get around it easily.
no,
And
well,
they
you
have-
have to take out rails.
Yeah.
They have a bunch of it there too. It
I'm
just seems
slowly
like.
starting to degrade my faith in everyone to obey granite posts or little markers or
Yeah.
whatever people have put in, because it tends to,
They know they have to be sneaky.
people
Trenches.
be like, oh,
Tank
we'll only
traps.
bring the 4-foot over, we'll get in the trench instead of the 6-foot one.
Right.
I'm not saying all companies do that, because a lot do not, but there are some that do.
And I mean,
Yep.
people.
And homeowners, so.
They do.
People for some reason think that they're like handiworking.
Okay, Starbuck Realty, LLC, 44 Warren's Landing.
Alright, so we had some talk, we have those things that are in there. That we were looking at perhaps a
To use Warren's Landing Road.
condition 24 that all construction
Road.
access is to be from Warren's Landing Road. Sorry, I just
Okay.
You say all construction access.
Yep.
And we
Yes.
have no cultivars for that one too, right?
Yeah, it's under.
Yeah.
Did we,
And
yeah,
this is the one where we really need to
Yeah, why don't
hold
we-
them to submit their fertilizer.
fertilizer records,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's what it was. So I apologize. The condition 22 was a leave-in. So I'll change 22 to be no cultivars. Are allowed, period. And then 25, any person to apply fertilizer, herbicide, or pesticide shall provide a copy of their license to the commission prior to any application, and a yearly report of all applications shall be provided to the commission. Alright, so just to read that again, any person to apply fertilizer, herbicide, or pesticide shall provide a copy of their appropriate license to the commission prior to any application, and the yearly report of all applications shall be provided to the commission.
And what's 22 again?
22 is just there are no cultivars allowed.
For,
And this is when it'll be back before us if the Board of Health had issues with the septic design, correct?
Yeah, if the component that they have issues with is within our jurisdiction, but I can tell you that the 2 tanks that are currently proposed in the leach field are all outside of our jurisdiction currently. So it wouldn't be, but my gut feeling tells me given where it is, I can see a pretty good push
For septic tank.
But I'm not sure it's gonna fall within that 300-foot
Yeah.
area, but I do believe it would fall within the Nantucket Harbor watershed.
Right, and they've done
Which
that
is
before.
already being deemed nitrogen sensitive.
Yeah.
We have a whole program of requiring high AHs in the watershed, so, I'm feeling confident that that secondary tank that you see that is now just a pump chamber will turn into a pump chamber with some sort of components from the Septic Tech Corporation or the Microfast Company or any other
Right.
thing that's there, just given the location that's there.
And there's no planned septic on Warren's Landing.
No planned
And-
sewer?
Yeah,
At this point,
I can't
no.
imagine.
I would, thinking about it in the future, if they put sewer down into Nantucket and went into Fisher's Landing to pick up a site like this that's just
Yeah.
around the bend,
Well,
wouldn't be unfeasible to do, but I don't think you would see it come around to Eel Point for quite some
yeah.
time.
Yeah.
As of June first of this year, like they did in the harbor watershed,
Yep.
any property transfer, new construction, upgrade, is gonna require an IA mandatory.
So
Yeah.
my guess
As
is
of-
this will go
as of
before the
June
Board of
1st,
Health.
Paul,
I
that
think
is?
it's June first of this year.
Interesting.
Yeah.
June, yeah. What's that?
My guess is they'll probably
Ask for it.
ask for it in this case.
Yeah, they will.
Demand it.
Yeah.
You're bringing it up.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, that one they might install. There may,
Yeah, I
there are
talked
other
to-
reasons too, but after that.
There's no choice anymore.
Yeah.
In that one.
Yeah.
It's just like they did in the harbor watershed.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I will tell you that in this case, from when I started with the commission, I probably talked to the public health director more a week than I talked to Richard for the entire time we overlapped. So Roberto and I talk a lot
Yeah.
for what's going on. So
You guys need to be in the fire station together.
we do.
Oh, chatty. Okay, there's no
I
other.
will tell you, we actually get a lot of work done when the two of us are in the same place at the same time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You want that
there's
fire
some,
station?
there's some, goofing around too, like everyone else. But
Well, you have a fire pole over there.
there's no
Fire
fire.
pool. they
We
won't
could put one
have
in.
anything when they move to the-
We'll get to that in later. All right,
Okay,
Need
so-
a motion on this one.
Do we have-
To approve
Move to,
as
go ahead.
amended.
Yep, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Wonderful, passes unanimously. NAC Conservation Incorporated,
I will admit,
204 Cliff Road.
first and foremost, on this
That's-
one, that I wasn't sure where the
Painful.
conversation was gonna go, so I kinda went kinda bare bones and just put the stuff that I knew for sure would be in there if it got approved.
Yeah, so can we say no work?
That's where you go home feeling bad. Oof.
No work shall be permitted or approved until.
Well, I think,
I mean, basically, it's just a case that it's completely theoretical.
It's a pretty much theoretical.
I don't even wanna talk
approval.
about a pool or anything.
I know.
Really.
well, I think if we put a
Approval of envelope.
condition, let's do the condition first, then we'll go back to the findings. So that'll be interesting. So if we have a condition that prior to the start of work, an amended order of conditions request shall be filed with detailed building plans, grading plans, and landscape plans.
And this is in the permit overview, right?
No,
Yeah, I was
this
about to
is,
say,
this
it
is
seems
a
like the overview
condition
needs
number
to be.
24. We'll do a finding, it won't be in the permit, you'll have a separate finding that determines that the project as proposed is permitting an envelope
Right.
defining the areas of buildability, and then you'd have the condition below. So, back to condition, so prior to the start of work, an amended order of conditions request shall be filed with detailed building plans, grading plans, and landscape plans for the commission to appropriately review and condition. And I think you go back up to additional findings 2. That the commission finds that the applicant's representation commission finds that the applicant's representation of the filing to be for the purpose of determining fair market value for the locus. And not for actual construction. Sorry, that's what I put. The commission finds that the applicant's representation of the filing to be for the purpose of determining fair market value for the locus and is not for actual construction.
Of a specific structure.
Of anything.
Period.
Of anything, right?
Yeah,
Anything.
yeah.
Or-
Less you say, the better, more coverage you get.
Right.
Actual work. And then I'll put behind that, this finding may be released upon the filing of an amended order of conditions. Does that sound fair to everyone?
Yep.
Yeah.
The commission finds that the applicant's representation of the filing to be for the purpose of determining fair market value for the locus is not for actual work. This finding may be released upon the filing of an amended order of conditions.
Yeah. I'll take it.
Do you
Yep.
want to add,
As outlined in condition 24.
you were worried about brush cutting taking place. Do you feel
Well, he
that's
said-
covered by that? By any
Yeah, because he
of
said start of work, so.
Okay.
Alright, so then are we taking everything else out, Jeff? 19,
Well, the permit overview, because they've put it on the plan of record, and that's the plan that we're referencing. So you're putting the work that's there, maybe you put, permits. I mean, you could put,
Should we
Well,
say
you
this,
just
this
add
permit?
theoretical, this order permits the
No
theoretical
work,
construction.
On this order, no work can be performed.
I'm just trying to think of how we want to put that to keep it correct.
Correct and vague. True, man.
Well,
We make a reg up next
I
time.
mean,
As vague as you can.
Couldn't you say something like if a pool is permitted?
Well, here,
it
how about this?
Yeah.
This order permits the establishment of building envelopes
There you go. Oh, yes.
for two structures,
There you go.
a septic system, patios and a pool, driveways. And put in driveways, then you could take away and associated, or you put, yeah, you could still have that driveways and associated grading, landscaping, and utilities within the buffer zone
Yeah.
to bordering
I think
vegetative
that's a
levels.
very good, actually, that makes it quite clear.
God, I hope the HCC would step up on this one too.
Good luck.
Well, I hope, I think.
My gut feeling
Nice.
tells me, and again, this is gonna be on the record, but it's kind of off the record. Given the fact that on the southern end of that piece, the access from that end crosses a land bank parcel, that the land bank has granted an easement across to get to it. My gut feeling tells me that this really fits within what the land bank looks for, to create those connectors that abut other land bank pieces.
Mm-hmm.
My guess is they're probably gonna put a value out there and go there and say, would you be interested in this? And it's probably something that'd be appealing and they'll negotiate, but my guess is that's probably where they would start, and if that breaks down, all bets are off, but this meets the criteria for what the land bank looks for a lot of times.
So, yeah.
We'll see.
Pretty
I may
cool
try to
spot.
put a bug in Eric's ear about it too, and say, hey, this may be coming your way.
I'd say
It'd be,
the conservation group should know about this.
Be a
it would be a
sweet.
really grand piece to have, because it
Unbelievable.
connects Nantucket to Cliff. If you were walking or biking, you get from one side to the other
Yeah.
relatively easily,
Always
so.
used to take it all the time.
Beautiful spot.
It's a great view.
It's cool.
Yeah.
That's my gut feeling on how that would go, because it's a
Hopes and
totally
prayers.
landlocked
Yeah,
piece by the
let's-
land
Yeah.
bank.
Hope
So,
Yeah.
Okay. So,
alright, so
Awesome.
that's, you have the permit overview. it says, this order permits the establishing of building envelopes for the rest of that stuff. We have that commission. The commission finds that the applicant's representation of the filing to be for the purpose of determining fair market value for the locus and is not for actual work. This finding may be released upon the filing of amended order conditions as outlined in additional condition 24. Additional condition 24 also has the prior to the start of work and amended order of conditions request shall be filed with detailed building plans, grading plans, and landscape plans for the commission to appropriately review the condition. But above that is still, actually, there's a bad. We take out the condition 22 that's there. Sorry, that was a bad copy of it. We still have the regular stuff for the pool, so they know what they'll expect at a minimum. And then the exterior lighting thing is there.
Yep.
So I think those are good to keep in, because that way if they do develop plans, they at least know that that is gonna be required out there.
Very good.
Okay.
Then we hope for the best. And I'm sure I'll get a call tomorrow and Kevin will be going, what is that? I'll be like, what is this?
How about approve as amended?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
I'll tell you, that is some
Kevin?
creative
Watching Yeah. I actually thought that was our clubhouse when you started talking about it. I was like, wait a moment. That's kind of cool.
What we do have, we'll do it here, because I can get it, is the order for Corel,
Yeah.
$29.99 with the amendment. Let me just bring up what it is right now, and we have some conditions.
Grill.
The amended order. So currently the conditions are that they place permanent markers along the 25-foot buffer zone. I think we should change that to read the applicant shall place split rail fencing do you want to put edge of lawn for what that is, a 25-foot buffer zone?
Yeah, maybe, because they're gonna, even though they have the auto cover, if the split rail connects to the other one, they're gonna want to fence that with wire.
Yeah, but they also have their little footpath access to the edge of the pond.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
that
I think
whole,
we need to mark it for them.
the 25, if you go 25 from that pond, it's gonna be right in the middle of their yard, right?
It's, yeah. It's way up there. It's close to the house.
Be a pool fence. It'll be a pool fence.
Well, the 25-foot buffer zone on this plan is down here.
Yeah.
And it comes across. I guess, just for clarity, Paul, had you anticipated that being along the 25?
So what?
The fencing?
I think it'll be awkward on the 25. I think it'll be in the middle of the lawn.
So why don't, we'll just call it the existing edge of lawn?
I think that'd for this property, I think that'd be
That's
okay.
practical.
It's just, it's kind of like historically developed. There's a little, there's a dock thing there. But where they've done the view clearing, if the fence surrounds
Oh, that should be good.
all that,
Blocked off,
yeah.
So you put a
Yeah, so
little
that's-
walkway through to the dock?
Well, it's, if you, here, pull it up. It's,
I looked at
seeing it's really
We'll have
worth
a
seeing,
plan subject to
kind
the
of.
approval of staff or the commission that we actually define it and even.
Flag.
And what do you think,
And then go take a look at it.
you know?
Yeah, I
where
think,
that,
yeah.
where that, kind of where they clip the,
Yeah,
that
they
barn
just
over
kinda-
that cherry.
yeah.
It's,
Yeah, I
that
think
got
that-
fenced off.
Mhm.
It would sort of keep the,
Keep the edge of the
it
pond
contained.
good then.
Keep the edge of the pond, and they'd have their access to their little
Yeah.
dock, you know?
Mhm.
Looks like it's always been there, sort of.
So I want to get my full sentence there. So I think we put 19. The applicant shall place split rail fencing in a location approved by commission staff. No cutting or pruning shall occur on the resource area side of the fence. And we would have 20 photographs of the no disturb area shall be provided to the commission at the beginning and end of the growth. applicant shall place split rail fencing on location per the commission staff. No cutting or pruning shall occur on the resource area side. Any cutting that occurs will be subject to punitive action taken by the commission.
Should we say like any cutting, cleaning? So I think sometimes people don't realize they're cutting when they're like breaking off dead branches.
I put cutting or pruning, so hopefully that covers what it is. We'll see where it goes, but I think if we put the sentence on there that any cutting that occurs will be subject to punitive action taken by the commission. Also, if then we choose to just issue a fine, we can already say, we already warned you, we told you, it's in an order, you recorded the order, you did it, here you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
No
there
more
should be
playing around.
little doubt now, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
They know what they're,
That's why I haven't come up here.
Do we
Yeah.
need to add?
Yeah.
He's there talking to.
yeah,
Only native
Then they can't say,
species
well, that's not.
and
Yeah.
shoreline.
right.
Yep, so in that condition 21, all plantings used for screening shall be native. Native species with no cultivars.
Did we need to tell them what road to access for this one too?
Yes, all construction access shall occur on field Ave. That's what all construction shall occur for, that was the end of the day. All construction access shall be from field Ave. Sometimes the fingers get ahead of time. Words that come out that time. Alright, so just to run through them again. 19, the applicant shall place split rail fencing in a location approved by commission staff. No cutting or pruning shall occur on the resource area side of the fence. Any cutting that occurs will be subject to punitive action taken by the commission. 20, photographs of the no disturbed area shall be provided to the commission at the beginning and end of the growing season. All plantings used for screening shall be native species with no cultivars. 22, all construction access shall be from field Ave. I did write out half of it.
Sounds good.
Make sure, that all make sense, Paul?
Mm-hmm.
Alright. Make sure that when we said that before.
Motion approved.
That's amended.
We did that already.
I think we did before, we already approved the
When we
project.
close,
But I was
we're
just wondering
issuing
that,
the
we're
amended.
just like,
We just approved it.
yeah, we approved it, we're just filling it in afterwards. There you go, it's a
We
new
gotta sign
approach.
it.
I was driving down there tonight.
We have to
and I'm
sign
like,
it.
this-
Okay.
This is just cool and old timey
Good,
down
so,
there.
other business,
Those are just very-
approval of minutes, everybody happy with the minutes?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you for the minutes, they're approved by unanimous consent. Monitoring reports,
I don't think we had any this time.
excellent,
This is a very non-monitoring reporting time.
time of year, dormant.
Unless there's storm reports that come
Too
in.
cold.
Yeah,
But I won't talk about it this evening.
no, knock on wood. Enforcement
Yeah,
actions?
Um, Enforcement actions, don't really have any to report on, with the exception of the discharge on Holbrook Ave. The tank is still in place that had the pipe, but there's nothing connected to it, it's just now a metal box.
Ah,
Was
But
that
all
on?
of the
Yeah.
drill points are
Yeah.
gone, and there's no flow going into it.
Good.
So that one is ceased to be.
Were you able to meet with, fellows labors on the property?
Oh, sorry, thank you for reminding. I met with Pete and with Phil to go over what it was, and they actually sent, art in the day after the meeting. I don't know how word got to them that fast that it came up, but
Phil has a
art
way to
came
get
in,
things done.
and we arranged a little visit with their trees and what got pulled over and the tree that got pulled over. And Phil and I had a nice long talk about, I know even if they're dead, we still need permits to remove them. And we had a good discussion, and we went through a few other spots with his property. And he said he would be in touch with anything further that they're wishing to do, and that they apologize for any inconvenience are on their way. So the Osleys are squared away, and the one son understands, and everyone seems to be pretty good, and he understands the purpose and what's going on. So I feel like there was a good constructive chat. So I would not anticipate seeing them unless it's through a 5-4.
That's awesome. Thank you for looking into that.
No problem.
Very good. Reports, CPC?
Well, well, yes,
Yeah.
I suppose. CPC was the venue for an end run around the voters last week with absolutely minimal notification. So with sort of 3 days notice, we were told that there was going to be a meeting to consider a bond application of the Affordable Housing Trust. We'd already given them $750,000 a couple of months ago, and Brian Talbot, the Director of Finance, was there, and he addressed the $3 million override the selectmen have been talking about for affordable housing, and he said he couldn't find it. And so lo and behold, out of the blue, it was suggested by Linda Williams, who didn't recuse herself, and Ken Bogman and Barry Rector, that the town or Affordable Housing Trust borrowed $5 million from CPC, although it wasn't put quite that way. So it was a bond issue, and so it was shoehorned through with Tim Soberino, Maria Zoto, and myself objecting strongly, and so $450,000 a year will now be taken out of the CPC budget to help do this end run around the voters on affordable housing.
Is that legal?
Well, it's a good question. So
Yeah.
we're asking, that's to be
That is
pursued,
bizarre.
because we're pretty miffed.
That seems like that's pre-deciding what
P.
CPC, yeah.
I was about to say they just took over your job.
Yeah.
That doesn't
That
surprise
sounds-
me,
That
but
doesn't sound legal to me, but I'm no expert, but.
with the usual characters.
It was really pretty stunning,
Yeah.
because normally we have this process where it
Yeah.
goes through with an application, and this is just like bang. And,
Jesus.
so anyway, so that's what we did in CPC last week.
I hope he gets
Sorry
sued.
about that.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Hope he gets sued.
Don't worry, they'll be planning all conservation issues too. Don't have to do
Maybe
anything.
I get them to give Mass Audubon like $500,000 a year for now and forever.
Yeah,
Forever.
there we go.
There we go.
All right.
Oh, God.
Yikes.
Well, nothing from MPDC, and I'm going to ask.
Mosquitoes were frozen.
That's a good one.
Chilled. Commissioner comments? Excellent. Administrative staff
All right,
report.
I'll go quick, but I just have a couple things. Just to let you guys know, because I actually brought it up, the point that Cormac made is the enabling legislation for conservation commissioners, and I'm happy to send it around to everyone tomorrow, because it's
That would be great.
Chapter 40,
Would you
Section
please?
C, but one of the things,
Or hold property.
the Concom has held property before,
Mm-hmm.
but one of the things that we are able to do, that we may do, is create a conservation and passive outdoor recreation plan, which shall be as far as possible consistent with the town master plan, with any regional plans relating to the area. So my guess, knowing that planning and NPDC put that together, is at some point, someone put that authority to create that plan to that agency. But it would certainly be something I would be happy to look into to see if that's something that we could come back to being one of the main bodies to help develop that plan. So, the rest of it's very, I'll send it around for everyone to read, because it's a lot. You guys can have staff, and you guys can
Oh, we
charge
can have staff?
applicants'
I want
fees
staff.
and-
Was that
Yeah, we get all
Let's
those
stay.
iPhones.
Get a personal assistant with this job.
I like that.
And an iPad.
No, so
You
the
got your
zoning
iPad already.
subdivisions
I want to give her my iPad and let her take notes. I said, sure. Is that sexist? Let them take notes for me.
It's a different arena. So.
Hard to me.
But, and then the second piece, and this is a totally selfish act, and I know I mentioned it last time, and we're trying to monitor, is one of the things that's a little bit afoot is the discussion of the reuse of the old fire station. And the two of us that have thrown our hats into the ring to relocate are co-locating our department with the health department in that building and turning a significant portion of the garage space into meeting space, so we can like go back to Wednesdays at 4 and we don't fight about meeting space again. But it's also a home for Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board, home for Board of Health, home for Fertilizer Advisory Committee, for those boards that kind of fit within there and have that location that's there, have all our files together, and we think it would help for a lot of efficiency reasons I don't need to get into for having, you know, one kind of office personnel to answer phones and direct people and do a lot of that stuff, but it also gives us a place. And one of the things that our other thought is, if we're doing different fertilizer training or different fertilizer testing, if we're both in the same spot and we have a meeting room, that we could literally offer that at almost any time that we can schedule it in, or we can have more times than what's available downstairs, to try to increase that to some degree. We think it's a lot more convenient for a lot of different reasons. It's close to plus, so people are trying to go back and forth. We think it's a good idea. I know not everyone does think it's a good idea, but it's something I know Affordable Housing threw their hat into the ring for that site. And
what would they do? Are they proposing housing there, Jeff? Do you know?
they have 90 days to come up with some
strange.
Well, they have
inventive,
$5 million.
inventive scheme.
Yeah, right. They're gonna
But-
spend some money now.
They're not gonna want that
Jesus.
building. The hell
I'll
they
put
want
it-
that
it-
spot
it's a-
for?
It's a building, it's structurally sound. It was just re-roofed in the last like 2
Yeah,
years.
it's a nice
Right.
building.
Kind of a bizarre.
It's
They're gonna
better
put
than
a
the building
piece
that
on the
we're in
pond.
now, and better than the health department's in now.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know if anyone's
Yeah.
been in the health department building, but it is
Oh,
gross.
Sure, a lot more convenient there.
Old building part.
We're out of space for files and things that give us a little bit more room to have and actually have meeting spaces where if you come to meet with me in my office, you're meeting with me and Joanne and Vincent, maybe whoever else is there, because we're all in there.
You're not gonna get to drive down Holbrook Ave though and check on these fertilizers every day.
Oh, I'll still be down there. I
We'll
still
make
gotta
a
go to
big
the I still have to go down to the hatchery down in Brant Point.
Okay.
Ah, there you go. Yeah, yeah.
We will still be there. So at some point, or if you guys think it's a good idea and want to do it now, I think we're just looking to get kind of the support from the Concom and the Board of Health at some point that
Like a letter.
you guys also think it's a good idea. A letter would be great to put on
Yeah.
record, or if when it
Yeah.
comes to the selectmen's agenda, if you guys want to designate someone that could possibly attend and say, we think it's
Fantastic.
You gotta turn off the
fantastic.
heat on 'em.
So,
And a foolish
well, that's
place
the thing
for
is there are a lot
housing.
of people that kind of grab at it, and
Yeah.
like affordable housing came out of the woodwork at the last minute, and they actually were
They
about
would
to
do
take.
it.
Well,
True.
sneaky
Gave 'em
people.
all this
They're
money.
good at that, aren't they?
Well, they were about to take a vote, and everyone was like, "Oh, we're going to move natural resources from the health department there," and it was there, and then all of a sudden they gave up and were like, "But we could use it for affordable housing," and then it was, "Well, we'll give you guys 90 days to see this." So
Jeez.
we were just like, so, again, it's something to think about. If you guys want to take action now, or you can instruct me to write a letter for the chairman to sign, that's
His
fine.
frustration
Why don't
comes
you do
out.
that? think we
I
should-
say go
the
for the
F one.
letter.
I go for
Yeah,
the
I
letter.
think so too.
Sure.
I'll sign it.
With what?
Affordable housing, when did they throw their hat in?
Let's talk about the
At the
staff.
selectment meeting where they were
We
talking
Yeah,
about.
want
what's-
some
what's
minions.
No one
That's
knew.
that's a nice way.
Big, huge condo right there in the corner.
No, it was like it was right after the start of the meeting.
Okay.
I think it was right first. meeting.
Let's negotiate this.
Oh no, it might have been right before.
How many
right before
minions can we
Christmas. It
get?
was right in that holiday.
I guess, but they had already got their 750,000.
God.
Jeez.
I say go on the letter.
Yeah,
All right.
Okay.
So is that the will of the board, is to have a letter that? Amy
I like a
signed?
letter.
Yeah.
I'll sign it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Hopefully that's there.
Peer
Hopefully-
pressure on.
Hopefully that means, and if you run into any of these selectmen, feel free to
Bend the ear.
tell them what a great idea it is.
It's a great idea.
How you're looking forward to having a,
Should leave notes on their cars.
so,
I'm going right down to the coffee shop tomorrow, see Jeff.
Okay.
I stopped in there,
So
but
if
he
there's
wasn't
nothing
there.
else,
See,
would someone like to make a motion for adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hey, Andy,
Yes, need a ride?
if it's raining, I got my bike. If it's
Sure.